Hi, my friends. Welcome to Deep State, Deep Six, the Deep State. And this is, of course, as you know, my daily television, Facebook broadcast about the news of the day. And the news today is quite huge. This whole uranium scandal with Hillary is becoming gigantic and could be a scandal that will absolutely sweep the plate of Obama and Hillary and virtually the entire Democratic Party. It is very, very big, and each day it grows bigger. Today's developments relate to Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, there was the monarch is very old, and he, a year or two ago, disinherited the son who was scheduled to become the prince. The king stripped him of being crown prince and gave it to his 32-year-old younger son, who is, to all appearances, a dedicated and committed reformer who really wants to change Saudi Arabia from the bottom up. Just recently, he's allowed women to go to sporting events. He has called for an end to Saudi dependence on oil for their economy by 2030. And he's making very major changes. The major change, though, was yesterday when he arrested 11 Saudi princes, the very top level of the kingdom, and banned their jet planes, their private planes, from taking off. And get this, he put them under house arrest. And you know where he did it? The Ritz-Carlton. He made them all stay in rooms at the Ritz-Carlton, cleared all the other guests out, and made it a prison for these Saudi princes, presumably with room service and hot water and everything else, although they're in hot water anyway, if you'll pardon the pun. But they're being prosecuted for corruption, and believe me, corruption is rife in that kingdom, and this is really a major charge. One of the Saudis that was caught up in that is one of the world's richest men, a guy named Al-Walid bin Talal. Al-Walid, A-L-W-A-L-E-E-D, Al-Walid bin, B-I-N, Talal, T-A-L-A-L. He crossed our radar screen a number of years ago when, after the demolition of the World Trade Center, he offered to pay New York City, I think, $10 million, and Giuliani told him to go to hell. And he's been a very strong and deep supporter of both Clintons. The Saudi monarchy gave $10 million to the Clinton Foundation. Not the Clinton Foundation, no, I think it was the Clinton Library, one of their first contributions. And almost all of the Saudi princes contributed substantially to the Clinton Foundation, and Saudi Arabia, through its various commercial arms, all more or less controlled by the government, have showered speaking fees on Bill Clinton. Now that Alawid bin Talal is swept up in a corruption investigation, it could be very interesting to see what comes out of that. And at the same time, it has been revealed a few days ago that Tony Podesta, John Podesta's brother, John is Hillary's campaign manager. Tony and John have been lobbying partners for a long time. They broke the firm up a couple of years ago. And it turns out that Tony Podesta was a lobbyist for the Saudi government and was paid $140,000 a month to lobby for Saudi Arabia. And he's there because he's so close to Obama and he's so close to Clinton. Now, it also turns out today that Tony Podesta was a lobbyist for Uranium One, the company that Russia bought, that took over a fifth of our uranium supplies and put them under Russian ownership. If you recall, that deal was approved by Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, sitting on the Committee on Foreign Investments. And it was approved despite the fact that the FBI had been monitoring extensive Russian attempts to bribe, coerce, and extort from individuals who were involved in approving that sale. Now it turns out that Tony Podesta, who is obviously very close to the Clintons, so close he was one of a handful of people at Hillary's birthday party a few days ago, was the lobbyist for the deal on behalf of Uranium One. So they hired the brother of Hillary's top person to lobby for this deal. And it puts the Clintons from the position that they've taken in the past, which is dispassionate advocacy of the deal. We approved it. We didn't see any reason not to. It's one where their chief aide, really, was paid an enormous amount of money to push this deal and to get it approved. And, ... he did not disclose it on his FARA form, Foreign Agent Registration Act form. Now, that itself is a felony, punishable by 6 months in prison or a fine. But when the element is added to it that he probably deliberately wanted to conceal that he was getting that money, and it was not a clerical oversight that he failed to register, and then you add to that the fact that Manafort was indicted for failing to register under the same statute, you've got a soup here that is cooking up and stinking to high heaven. So the tentacles here of the Saudi Uranium One bin Talal, this guy, Hillary and Podesta, this conundrum, this circle, really is huge. It could blow the lid off the entire Obama administration, the entire Hillary and Bill Clinton persona. It could lead to criminal prosecutions. And just as Paul Manafort was, in the opinion of Robert Mueller, the point of vulnerability for Trump, and probably is not, so Tony Podesta is in fact the point of vulnerability for Hillary and Bill Clinton. And just as the Manafort deal goes to Ukraine, the Tony Podesta deal goes to Saudi Arabia. And many of the fundamental facts in the Manafort indictment were first exposed by the Ukrainian government, which is pro-Western now, and hated Manafort because they opposed him. Many of the facts that now will be investigated are coming from Saudi Arabia, which is also investigating the domestic corruption. These scandals are really mirror images of each other, involving two very wealthy countries and two very highly ranked lobbyists. But Manafort is no intimate of Trump's. They knew each other only vaguely when they hired Manafort. He worked for them for 5 months and then he got fired. John Podesta has been Bill Clinton's go-to guy for 30 years, 40 years. I knew John Podesta during my time at the White House. And Tony Podesta is his brother, and they were always together in the lobbying practice. So this is really a huge scandal, a gigantic scandal. Now, at the same time, all this is coming together. The FBI turned over to Congress records on Comey's decision not to prosecute Hillary. And here's what the records show. Very significant. In an early draft of his statement about whether to prosecute Hillary or not, James Comey wrote that Hillary was, quote, grossly negligent, unquote, in her handling of the emails. The statement he finally released several months later said she had been, quote, extremely careless, unquote. Now, not only is that softer language, but grossly negligent is the language used in the statute that makes it a crime to be grossly negligent in handling these emails. So accusing her of gross negligence is obviously the precursor to a criminal indictment, because gross negligence is not just a couple of words, it's a term of art enshrined in the statute itself. And Comey's statement says, in effect, Hillary was guilty of what this statute lays out, gross negligence. Then he pulled it all back and issues another statement 4 months later that says, oh no, she wasn't grossly, she was just extremely careless, which is not a statutory language, does not involve a crime. And the question is, how did he go from point A to point B? And what role did Hillary play? What role did Loretta Lynch play? What role did Robert Mueller play? And a whole lot of other stuff like that. there's more. I'm sorry, let me pause briefly for questions, but this goes on.
I'm going to make a comment. Celine Cuomo just said corruption here, there, and everywhere.
Got that right.
And Del Volpe asks, how can Hillary Rodham Clinton have so much power over so many powerful people? If she does down, then why would she take them with so many with her?
She will take a lot with her. And she has so much power because her husband was president and she was Secretary of State. And, you know, those are not insignificant jobs. Now, there's more that came out today. Apparently, Mueller was the point man when he was head of the FBI in revising the training manuals for FBI agents to make them inoffensive to Islamist extremists. On orders of Obama, the FBI purged under Mueller's direction, Obama's direction, through Mueller. The FBI purged all anti-terrorism training material deemed offensive to Muslims after secret meetings between Islamic organizations and FBI Chief Mueller. Judicial Watch had to sue to get the records and published an in-depth report on the scandal. Mueller met with various Islamist organizations, including the Islamic Society of North America, by the way, whose two-term president was the chief advisor to the Committee on Foreign Investments that Hillary sat on that approved the uranium deal, and the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, which is the militant, strong, aggressive, pro-Islamic group. Their main weapon is the slap suit. They go around suing people who attack Muslim terrorists and expose them, and for huge damages, just simply to seize their bank accounts, to go after them. They never win, but it's called a slap suit. It's to terrify people and keep them silent and make them worried about a libel suit like that. Both organizations, the CAIR, was named by the U.S. government as an unindicted co-conspirator in the 2007 Holy Land Foundation terrorist financing case. Shortly later, after the meeting, the director assured the Muslim groups, Mueller, assured the Muslim groups that he had ordered the removal of presentations and curricula on Islam from the FBI offices nationwide. Article is highly inflammatory and inaccurately argues the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization, Mueller said. The Muslim Brotherhood has just been designated by the U.S. as a terrorist organization. An article claiming Al-Qaeda is clearly linked to the 93 World Trade Center bombing was also deleted. And also deleted was this sentence from the training manual. Those who fit the terrorist profile best are young male immigrants of Middle Eastern appearances. And he deleted that. I guess blonde-haired, blue-eyed Scandinavian Nordics are the key profile. Then, there's more. It turns out that when Mueller was the head of the FBI and was investigating this uranium deal that Hillary signed off on, and the Russian agents tried to bribe and infiltrate, he made the FBI investigators who were pursuing the matter sign non-disclosure agreements called NDAs, which are really enforceable in court. And it was basically a gag order to stop them from speaking in public about what they knew. By silencing them, Obama's Justice Department and the FBI knowingly kept Congress in the dark about Russia's significant and illegal involvement with American uranium companies. Puts him right at the center of being responsible for this uranium scandal that is metastasizing all over the government. Now, if there is a special prosecutor appointed in the uranium scandal, Sessions would not have to recuse himself. Sessions, when he recused himself from all matters related to the Trump-Russia meddling case, said he would recuse himself from any existing or future investigations of any matters related in any way to the campaigns for President of the United States. That does not include the uranium deal, except that it was raised as an issue. But for all the issues Trump is pressing for the department to act on, justice officials would still need to determine that there was actual criminal activity warranting a further look, let alone appointment of special counsel. But Sessions can't dodge this one. His recusal didn't cover it. And Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, Republican, just called for a special prosecutor in the uranium case. Now, Graham is an especially respected Republican. He and McCain are sort of the leading hawks in the Senate. And he and McCain are sort of independent of the Trump administration in advocating greater national security and greater defense spending. And they've often been their own advocates, mavericks, and his advocating a special counsel is really significant. Finally, Mueller has leaked that he now has enough evidence to indict Flynn, Mike Flynn, who was named security advisor, and his son. Another crime committed by Mueller. That's an illegal thing, to leak that you have enough evidence for an indictment before you actually do the indictment. Okay.
Okay, we have a new name here. His name is Daniel Manley, and he wants to know, do you think that with the new news about the Podestas and Donna Brazil's book revelations would ever lead to a Hillary investigation?
Oh, absolutely. Now I think you got to say it's far more likely than not. This Podesta trail goes right through Bill and Hillary Clinton because of the massive amount of money they received from Saudi Arabia and the closeness of that relationship. I have a story to tell you about that. When you remember in 1995 or 96, I forget, the Khobar Towers bombing. The Khobar Towers were a residential housing complex where the United States housed the military that it had stationed in Saudi Arabia. And there was a terrorist attack on it that killed over a dozen U.S. servicemen. As soon as the bomb exploded, Louis Freeh, the director of the FBI, was on the phone to the White House saying, please ask President Clinton to call the Saudi king and to secure access for the FBI to their investigation. And specifically, we're worried that the last time there was an investigation like this, the Saudis captured those who they said were responsible and then beheaded them before anybody could ask them any questions. And we want him to specifically appeal to the King of Saudi Arabia not to do that. So they passed that on to Clinton. He made the phone call, but he never asked him about that. The whole phone call was devoted to asking the king to give $10 million to the Clinton Library. Incredible story. Okay. Now, I've been talking to you a lot about Patriot Gold, and I wanted to put it into a perspective because there is really a brand new perspective about that really could affect the entire paradigm of investments and economics in the world. It comes to us from James Rickards, who's the former CIA analyst who specializes in global economic trends. Rickards reports that China and Russia and Iran are now buying oil, not selling oil and buying oil, not in dollars as the Saudis do, but in yuan, Y-U-A-N, the Chinese currency. And that the Bank of China has said it will convert yuan into gold at the market price anytime anybody wants. Now, the United States achieved global dominance for the dollar in 1974. Nixon had taken us off the gold standard in 71, and the dollar was insecure in 74. So Kissinger met with the King of Saudi Arabia, and they agreed that the Saudis would take dollars for oil, not any other currency. And what that did is it made every country in the world switch their economy, their exports, to dollars, because they needed the dollars to buy the oil, and they wouldn't accept any other currency. Now China, Russia, and Iran are breaking with that and saying we'll take yuan instead of dollars. And China, which has always said the yuan is not convertible into anything. You can use it to wallpaper your house or buy goods in China, but you can't use it to anything outside of China, has now announced it's changing its policy and will convert the yuan into gold. And this is part of a global effort by those anti-American nations, probably soon to spread to the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China. And they all will probably follow suit, which means there is a massive move away from the dollar toward the yuan encouraged by China, but toward gold, because nobody wants yuan. But this would be the only way you can get gold. So you can't take a dollar bill anymore into the treasury and get gold. Haven't been able to do that since 1933. But you can take a yuan into the bank in China and get gold. And this, I believe, will presage an enormous increase in demand for gold. That's why this, which should be an item on my newscast, it's so important, is actually an ad for the Patriot Gold Group, because you want to get it on the ground floor of this. So call them at 800-476-5675 or go to patriotgoldgroup.com.
I'm just putting it in right now. We have a question here. Roger Richter wants to know, do you feel a special prosecutor will be appointed?
Yes.
And Chris Wellen...
yes. I can't be certain, but at the moment the odds are more likely than not. You have Trump appealing for it. You have the House Judiciary Committee asking for it. You have 2 or 3 key U.S. senators asking for it. You have the Wall Street Journal calling for it. And the more this Podesta uranium thing unravels, the more there's going to be a lot. For starters, you got to prosecute Podesta for not registering under the FARA Act in the uranium deal. That's pretty damn important. And by the way, Podesta has 3 lobbying issues. One is the uranium deal. The other is that he lobbied for this corrupt guy in Saudi Arabia. And the third is that he lobbied for the Ukraine Yanukovych pro-Russian government, the same one that Manafort lobbied for to repeal the Magnitsky Act sanctions.
Chris Wellens wants to know, so are arrests going to be made?
Well, we're ways away from that. There's got to be a prosecutor, then there's got to be a case, indictments, then arrests, but stay tuned.
And Andy DeFondi asks, what's going to happen to Manafort?
I think Manafort will be convicted. I think they'll pressure him to turn on Trump. I think they'll find out he has nothing he can say about Trump. And I think then they're going to proceed with an aggressive sentencing, and I think he'll go to jail for a long time. He's 71 years old. It's quite possible that he will die in jail.
And Daniel Merrick asks, is there any info coming out of Comey's brother working for Hillary?
I don't know about that. I'd never heard of that. Okay. I'll check it out. Can you remind me to check it out?
I definitely will, yes.
Good. Now, I want to talk about the Baptist church shooting. First of all, it is worth noting, even though the media has buried it, that the way they stopped this monster from going around and shooting up other churches is that there was a plumber, that was his occupation, with no military background at all, who was a sharpshooter as his hobby. And he shot the killer, Devin Kelly, right in between his body armor. In other words, the place where the body armor didn't go, just above it or just below it. A fine piece of marksmanship. And the plumber's name is Stephen Willford, Willeford. He shot it through a gap in the body armor. Now, what an incredible shoot. And worth noting that if we had tough gun laws, it probably would not have stopped Kelly from getting his gun, but it sure as hell would have stopped Willeford from getting his, to stop this shooting. Now, once there's a shooting, everybody trots out the agenda. The left wants gun control, the right says we need more guns for less crime, and everybody does this. So if there's an immigration issue they talk about it. But there is one fundamental thing, and I keep saying it, and I hope not to have to keep saying it because it's getting monotonous. But there have been 304 mass shootings in the United States this year, 2017. 307. 307 mass shootings since January 1st in the United States. The only solution to this is metal detectors and cops to man them. And every church should have a metal detector, synagogue, mosque. Every movie, every sports event, every place where people gather. And the federal government should pass legislation helping to finance this. It should offer to pay for the metal detectors to man that, and local police forces should be given extra manpower to man those metal detectors. If we had a huge problem, obviously, with shootings and bombings on airplanes, and we solved it completely with metal detectors. Let's do the same thing now with churches and sporting events and movie theaters and all kind of concerts, all kinds of stuff to stop this kind of shooting and to stop Las Vegas shooting. Now, in a minute, I'm going to be talking about a very interesting thing. It appears that the issue of Obamacare and the issue of illegal immigration are closely tied in with the tax cut. Hi, welcome back. Now, this is an incredible broadcast. I was just saying to Renee, so please share it with everybody. I mean, you really have to know this. This whole uranium, Podesta, Hillary, Saudi scandal now has legs that you wouldn't believe. So much more important than any of the Trump scandals, which are based on nothing. Now, this is fascinating. The Congressional Budget Office has helpfully said that if the mandate, the requirement that each individual buy health insurance is repealed, the federal government can save $416 billion over a 10-year period. Save that much. The reason they do it is pretty obvious and a little gruesome. They said that if there is no mandate, a lot of people won't buy insurance, and we won't have to pay out as much in subsidies for that insurance. But be that as it may, it thrusts Obamacare repeal right into the center of the tax cut debate. Remember, the total tax cut is about $1.5 trillion. $0.5 trillion of it could be realized by repealing the individual mandate. Trump has just called for that. I'll bet it's included. I'll bet it passes. And I'll bet this tax cut kills two birds with one stone. Once you eliminate the mandate to buy Obamacare, you set in motion a series of events that will destroy Obamacare. Once there's no requirement, good, healthy people who don't need it will stop buying it. That will cause the rate pool to become older and sicker. That will drive up insurance rates. That will make it harder and harder for people to buy insurance. And the people who are young and healthy will see the high rates and high deductibles and won't go in, which will in turn make it worse. A vicious cycle. The insurance companies will look at that cycle and run screaming and say, I'm not going to base my whole company's financial future on this stuff. I want to get out of Obamacare. And then there'll be nobody left to offer the insurance. This is the first step in unraveling this system. And it looks like we can get it in the tax cut. The second thing that I want to point out is something I didn't know, and I don't know if you knew. Do you know that there are 8 tax credits that illegal immigrants are entitled to receive in the United States? And by tax credits, I don't just mean deductions. I mean a check, actual money. The first one is the Earned Income Tax Credit, which can go up to $6,100. That's billed, and it's a wonderful program, as a way that to assure that anyone who goes to work, works full-time, and comes home is not in poverty, by giving them a stipend, an additional credit, in addition to their income that brings them above the poverty level. It's really the best alternative to raising the minimum wage. The minimum wage sticks it to the small business, and it takes it out on hiring fewer people, automating more. But this is the government doing it, which is how you ought to do it. It's a great program. I worked on expanding it. But now it applies to illegal immigrants, which creates a great big cash bonanza for them to come to the United States. The other program is the child credit. For each additional child, you get $1,000 of tax credit. Trump is raising that to $1,600. And in both these cases, if the amount you've earned in the credit exceeds the amount you paid in taxes, you not only get the taxes wiped out, you get a check for the balance. It's called a refundable tax credit, which is a fancy word for welfare. Also, there is something called the American Opportunity Scholarship that offers up to $2,000 a year as a refundable tax credit, read welfare, for tuition at community and state colleges. And then there's the health coverage tax credit that offers you assistance in buying health insurance. All of these are available to illegal immigrants who are in this country illegally. And together they constitute a great big attractive object that will motivate people to come to the United States. Come to the U.S., go right on welfare, and your future is made. Now, illegal immigrants are not allowed to receive welfare, aid to families of dependent children. And I don't believe they're permitted to receive Medicaid. But they are permitted to receive these other programs. And in Trump's tax cut, he cuts it off for illegal immigrants. He says you need a Social Security number to get those programs, which means you have to be here legally. So, and those programs cost up to $10 billion a year that we are spending to subsidize and, more importantly, incentivize illegal immigration. And Trump is going to cut that back, which I think is really important. Can we do it now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. We're about to break for an ad, and when we come back, I want to talk to you about how Obama deliberately hid 500,000 documents that were obtained from Osama bin Laden's house when they raided it and killed him, designed so that he could portray bin Laden as more fearsome than at that decrepit age he really was.
Got an ad.
When we broke into Osama bin Laden's home and killed him, Obama portrayed him as the mastermind behind Al-Qaeda. And obviously he was the mastermind behind 9/11. But the documents we seized indicate that at the time of his death, Osama bin Laden was frustrated and isolated, a relatively powerless leader of a dying organization. In the summer and fall of 2012, Obama would use this theme as his main national security rationale for re-election, saying that Al-Qaeda was on the run, decimated, on the path to defeat, and that its leader had been killed. But apparently, Osama had been sidelined by then and was a pathetic old sick man at that point, who was isolated and not in any way in the chain of command. There were 500,000 documents that were seized in his home. 17 of them, not 17,000, 17 of them were released. The others have not been released. Now, obviously, with some there's a national security reason, but there may also be a political reason to convince everybody that killing Osama bin Laden ended the terror threats of the United States. Bear in mind that it was the similar motivation that led Obama and Hillary to characterize the Benghazi assault as just a demonstration over a movie that was offensive to Muhammad's memory. That was so that they could say that there wasn't a terrorist attack on the anniversary of 9/11 that killed 4 Americans, including our ambassador, but would say that Al-Qaeda was really destroyed once we got Osama bin Laden, and it was really a game changer, which it really wasn't. It was important to do it, but it certainly did not end the terror threat posed by Al-Qaeda or by ISIS or by other groups.
Dick, Suzanne Bugby wants to know, any news about the EMP transformers?
Yeah, thanks. EMP is electromagnetic pulse. The danger is that a atomic bomb exploded above the United States would fry all of our transformers and knock out the entire power grid, maybe for months, eliminating light, refrigeration, gasoline, everything we need for a stable existence. I'm very frustrated about this. I wrote Congressman Trent Franks yesterday, Arizona, who is the leading person pushing this bill. What the bill would do, it's called the SHIELD Act, and it would require that every utility insulate its transformers so that they would not be fried in the event of an EMP. And it gives the president the authority to order them to do so. Desperately needed, very important, probably passed unanimously, but it hasn't happened yet. And Frank said that his plan was to introduce this as an amendment to the energy bill, the authorization for the Department of Energy. But he said the energy bill hasn't passed yet this year, and they're going to break it up into component parts, and that he's going to attach it to one of those parts, and he thinks that that's going to pass. But that sounds more like March or April, and it's outrageous that in a matter like this, of such importance, with Korea threatening to use the EMP, is now being delayed so long. Renee is jumping out of her mind. What's
We're number one, that's why, in the world.
Oh, good. Number one in the world.
My cheerleading.
This video. It really ought to be. I mean, my God. This is incredible. Incredible. Okay, yes.
Okay, well, Marietta Star, I'm seeing a lot of new faces. It's exciting. Why is McCain voting against everything?
Because he's a bitter old man at Trump. He hates Trump. Trump said that he was not a war hero, that he was captured, and he liked war heroes who weren't captured. And that was a vicious, horrible, stupid, outrageous thing for Trump to say, and McCain never has forgiven him and never will forgive him. And he's going to wait till the last minute and then throw that monkey wrench in and derail Trump's most important legislation. Now, he might do that to the tax cut, but there are indications that we might do better this time than we did with Obamacare. One is that Rand Paul, who always votes no, has indicated that in return for certain concessions, most of which are pretty good, that he might vote yes. Secondly, Susan Collins from Maine, liberal Republican, says that she wants certain things, increasing the child tax credit, but she's not drawing lines in the sand, which means she's not threatening to vote no. So there's a lot of stuff here that's pretty good, and it seems to be coasting through the House, which augurs very well for the Senate. But as for John McCain, I mean, he's got a case, but for God's sakes, this is not the time to act out a private grudge.
Craig Corsini asks, how are the 2018 elections looking?
I think they're looking pretty good. We don't know yet because we don't know all about the candidates or the challenges. Let's just say this, the economy is doing very well, and that is always a very important factor. Trump seems to have survived the Russia meddling scandal. It's still there, but he seems to have survived it, and it looks like Hillary is sinking into quicksand over this Uranium 1 scandal. And then on top of that, you have the split in the Democratic Party, with Donna Brazile, the former party chairman, denouncing the Hillary campaign for colluding with the committee to sideline Bernie Sanders and make it almost impossible for him to win the election. And these all clearly have the Democrats on the defensive. And most important of all, it looks like Trump is going to pass the tax cut. And it looks like Obamacare repeal will be in the tax cut. That is absolutely wonderful. So on that note, thank you very much. This has been great. Please share it all over the place. Because how do you live in this world without knowing the stuff we just talked about? Okay, thanks.
Are we done?
We're not done.
Oh, no. We have a few more things to do.
Okay,
here.
Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, well, I want you to give a little shout out to this young man right here.
7-year-old Miles Cleveland. I'll read what his dad wrote to me.
Yes, his dad, Scott Cleveland, wrote in over the weekend. Love watching the daily videos. Dick just blows me away with what an intelligent man. I have a little boy, he's 7. Miles Cleveland is his name. He likes to watch the videos with me. He thinks Dick is funny. So if Dick would ever want to give him a shout out, this little Nebraska boy would be tickled. Thank you, Renee.
Miles, I shout out now Nebraska. Oh, Cleveland is the name. It's
That's just right. Their their last name is Cleveland.
Hey, Miles. Thanks for watching. You take care.
And then,
I'll run your campaign someday.
And then we have Rosanna Samartano wrote, I am new to your show, but now that I found you, I'm following you, and thank you for your detailed accounts of current events.
Thank you.
And finally, Wayne Panda wrote in, read your book, Rogue Spooks, and I'm going back through it and studying the chapters one by one. Excellent book. Each time the Democrats say or do something criticizing Trump, his supporters, and the issues we believe in, I become more solidified and steadfast that I will never vote for Democrat as long as I live. And then we have to do the selfie.
There could be some good ones eventually, but reread the FBI chapter, because that's the core of what's going on right now. Now, I want to selfie of the day.
Yes.
The person who's holding up Rogue Spooks on my homepage goes to Jane Imparl, Imparl. And I just want to mention again that if you want me to send you a label that you can paste into Rogue Spooks, into the book, signed by me and personalized to you, I'll put in whatever message you want. Go to Dick Morris Promos. Dick Morris, Promos, at gmail.com, and we'll send you the the label by
Bookplate.
snail mail.
Great. A whole bunch went out today, and you have a whole bunch to sign today.
Good. Thank you.